And it's by no means, people misunderstand, when people talk about things, or somehow they get offended. I'm not sure why, but anyway, I want to show you what kind of we're trying to find the solution to. If we take a look at, one of the great threads here by CT and some of the $1 million, I know Avion and Way Too Fast and CT are going back and forth in this. I would do what I always do, wait for CT and follow him. I would probably not bet. I agree with CT. It seems too perfect for players to repeat here. Very tempted to bet chop, but I probably, we say a lot of things like this, and it's by no means a criticism. It's just, I'd probably wait. There's more of a chance that I don't see a reason to bet than there is a bet. And what we're trying to nail down for some folks who come in and they don't really get the theory or the logic behind follow the shoe is we're trying to put some more statistics on it to make it a little bit easier. We're not sure if it's actually going to do it, but I want to take a look at some of these things and see if we can find some other statistics that may be valuable to us. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? That's why we're kind of looking at this. Like, why do we bet? We keep saying, well, we're going to bet a 2 in a row here or whatever they said because it was a 2 in a row back here, and then it's choppy, and that's the reason we do that. And there's other things that we consider, but we want to see if we can quantify them just a little bit more. And I always learned in statistics that if you put numeric values to things, or you can get that data at it, it always makes it a lot more sure. Now, maybe we'll be successful, maybe we won't. But that was the course I wanted to take and make sure that we kind of revisit some of these. And some of these things that I bring up, some people have looked at them, but they haven't looked at them statistically. One of the things that I always see, and I'm sure you guys always do, and I'm always on my YouTube channel. By the way, please go to it and add some commentary there. And if you look through the comments there, what I always get is the long-term odds. What's your advantage, and what's the long-term odds? And I have a heck of a time getting people to understand, we don't really look at the long-term odds. And we all know what they are. We all know the banker has a little bit more than a 1% advantage because of the hits and everything. But that aside, we look at each game individually as the entire population of what we're talking about. I think everyone gets that, right? Anybody? Everyone gets that, right? We look at each game kind of new. It's like, here's all we have. This is all the information we have. It doesn't matter what happened yesterday at this casino or a million Baccarat hands. That's the first concept that I have, that we have a closed system. And I learned that in statistics from some of the masters, actually at Villanova. They said all you can really tell is what's going on right now in this game. And is it happening by random chance, or is it happening for some other reason that we can identify? Okay, and when we're gambling and we're finding trends and things like that, it doesn't really matter, okay, because if we find it and we bet it and it continues, we're going to win. That's the first thing. And then the other reason I got into this, I want to get on this path, not to lecture everybody, but I want to kind of give you the background of how I'm thinking, is if you, let's say, for instance, you take this shoe here by CT, or any one of them. I remember one we put up out in Vegas where there was some of you guys.
I remember seeing
it. Okay, yeah, do you, right? So here's the thing, is if we take, here's what I want everyone to understand about these long-term odds. Then I'll go into what I was looking at and some of the things that I found, and I think Andre came up with some things and some other you guys came up with some things. But if you continually, when people talk about the long-term odds, if we take something and we see a bias in a game, let's say there's a 31 in a row, okay, so there's 50 banks and 21 players in the game or something crazy like that. If we just take that game and just keep throwing in more samples and samples and samples and samples of games, after 10 you'll still see it, after 20 you'll still see it, but after you add 150 games to that bell curve is just going to start to normalize again. So no matter what you see, it's just going to get smaller and smaller and smaller because you're looking at an infinite number of possibilities. And every time you add sample to it, it makes each significant one that you just played less significant. So when you look at the long-term odds, it's just going to always go back to normal distribution, okay? You get what I mean? You just throw so many samples at it that it has to just keep coming in and getting less and less and less significant. Now, the only way it wouldn't get significant, and it's how when the online casinos used to try to find people who were cheating, talking on phones to each other and doing other things or had some code, is if it would never stop. If it would just simply never stop. They'd see people out here, outliers, who would always win. And it wouldn't just happen for a little bit and then normalize as it should. It would just always stay out there. And that's what I always refer to as the assignable cause. There's some reason. Either it's a bad shuffle or, who knows, maybe there's some crazy cards or, the humidity's making cards stick. I mean, who knows what it is? It doesn't really matter. But if it continues, then I call it assignable cause. And that's what we're really looking for. If you find that, you can beat them. Okay, so that's what got me, that's what the way I'm thinking and why I do this. And I wrote this discussion about it, okay, which is what I think prompted everybody. And I got a lot of charts and stuff I want to show you over the next couple of weeks, which I'm sure you'll find is interesting, and I hope you come up with some things too. But, I categorize things, and this is just basic statistics, we use categorical data. When we look at things, when we look at SBI and all that stuff, right? We always look at 2 in a rows and 3 in a rows, and we put them in a category. Well, this is a 2 in a row, and there's been 3 of them, and we put a number by it. We compare them, so it's a little bit more than categorical. It may be ordinal. We can kind of organize them in some ways, not in a traditional statistical sense, because none of them probably are not more at a higher level than the other one. And I mean, it's up for debate. But in any event, we make them, we categorize them, and we do put a number on them. So it's kind of between categorical and ordinal data. And then we look for what we say is the most common a lot of times and the least common. Correct? Most common. Yep. Most common, and most common is simply this. It's called the mode. We have the average, the mode, and the median. Trying to find center, average, mode, and median. Okay, so the average we're used to is you add them all up and divide by the number of integers that you have. In other words, if you have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you add all 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 up and then divide by 4, and then it tells you the average. Well, there's other ways to look at measurements of center. Is called the mode, and that's the one that we use a lot in Beat the Casino. We don't call it the mode; we call it most common. Okay. And then we use the outliers that are called least common. Well, not necessarily outliers, but least common, the one that's happening the least. And I think for all our purposes, those are the two we use the most. Is that correct? Does everyone agree with me on that? Or what do you guys think? You can disagree. If I'm missing something, tell me.
Sounds good so far.
Yeah, okay. Okay, who wouldn't say anything no matter what the hell I ask you? Okay. Okay, so then the next level of data is ordinal data, or interval or ratio level, and they're both pretty much the same. An interval level is where there's a difference in the numbers. In other words, you can categorize them. They're these numbers, and they're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and there's a ratio between, there's the same difference between 1 and 2 and 2 and 3 and 3 and 4, and 7 is 7 times higher than 1, okay? And that's the information that the cards give you, because we're looking for a score. A 10 is 0, right? So we're looking for a score. So that data that has the most detail, that has the most granularity, what do we do with it? Does anyone know? What do we do with it at BTC mostly? Huh? We bet it? Do we bet it? We ignore it, okay? Has anyone ever seen it? Pretty much anyone talking about the score of the hand or the cards, the numbers of the cards? Huh? Well, a 4 or 5 score. Well, it has pretty much just as much chance to go up as it does down. But what I did notice is what you noticed is that it generally goes up, down, on both sides all the time. However, I don't think. It's been my experience that I kind of wanted to throw it out to the group what I was looking at. What is most significant what you see in strong side, and that's the first thing I was trying to tackle with strong side, is that you'll see it go down 3 times. Sometimes it's hard for it to go down 3 times, or it stays the same. And that you contrast and correlate that to the mode score of each side, which is, in other words, what's the most common score on each side? You'll find that, and I'll show you here. I'll write it out. What's the most common score on each side after 10 or 15 hands? On banker, let's say it's 7 or 8 or 6, okay, somewhere there. And on player, it might be 4, okay. And then on the player side, you may see the score in a trend go down 3 times. Like they may hit a 9, but then it goes down to 6, and then it goes down again, and then it goes down again. And those are things that are indicative of strong side. And that's what I was after first. And
Sorry.
no, go ahead.
No, I will say one thing. But we don't know if the strong side is a consequence from the points gain,
Right.
or vice versa. Because it's right that is a fact that the most common event is up and down.
Yep.
And you can track this. But when you match this with the starting point, an example,
Mm-hmm.
you have a 3, and the 3 go down 2, and the 2 maybe can be 3, but the other side gets every time a point higher than this.
Yep.
So the up-down is respected, but you can have a strong side play on your player-banker column.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I can explain this well.
No, you do. You do. That's exactly what I'm looking for. In other words, here's what he's talking about. You know, for those of you who are new to it, we track the score, and traditionally we don't track the score on BTC. Well, like I said, we look at mostly opposites, repeats, 2 in a row.
I started doing this.
Yeah.
When you open this thread.
Yep. So this here, Andre, we would mark down to your point, and this trend we would mark up. Now, hold on. Sorry.
What?
I got these darn pens. These things are great, but sometimes I don't. I should practice with them a little bit more, I think. So this went from 4 to 3. So this went down 2. Okay. So the trend here for both sides was down. Okay. Now I track. This is what I track too, Andre. I track it, and of course we don't have cards here. And next time, once I show you the other charts that I'm working on, I'll do cards. But in the explanation, in case you didn't get it, I put a circle if it's hit, and if it lowers the score, I put a minus in it. Okay. So in this one, these were both hit. They have to be. And I would put a minus in it. Okay? So that means that this hand was hit, and the hit lowered the score. The trend is down, and here's the score. Now, here's, what will be the other thing I'm tracking. If a side has a tendency to go down, and they're both too low scores, I would consider, and I would still play follow the shoe, but I would consider, let's say, for instance, if banker, and we don't have enough history there, I'm just writing in numbers. If banker has more of an uptrend, has more ups than downs, I would bet that banker has a little bit better shot at winning in this case, if all other things considered. And that's really what we're looking for, is what are these trends within the numbers that we can see that will help qualify a 2 in a row or a 3 in a row or a run or a strong side. And that's what I'm looking for with this. So when you're filling out your scorecard, let's say, for instance, if this one goes to 8, then this would just be up, okay? And that would be a natural, let's say. Or I mean it can hit. You could put a circle here and put a plus in it, and all that would mean is that this hand was hit, okay, and it improved himself with a hit, okay. The next thing would be this. Then this wasn't hit. It was just a it was just a total, then this would go, you would put a 5 here. Let's say, for instance, it had a 5, and then this trend would be up. And that's what we're tracking, and that's what I'm trying to keep track of and make, some significant inference as to what's going on in the game with respect to these numbers. Okay, does that make sense to everyone? Anybody have any comments, or have anybody experimented with it beyond Andre? A little bit. Anybody?
I have.
Who?
This is Mike. I have.
What do you think, Mike? What are you finding, Mike?
Well, I didn't do a whole bunch. I just did a couple of shoes.
Uh-huh.
Well, I was dealing to myself.
Yeah, right.
And it was kind of hard. I need to practice more before I really comment further.
Yeah, no.
One talks a little because you say nobody talks, but
No, please do.
Seriously, I find it very intriguing and just need. I developed this horizontal scorecard when I was trying to figure out Alex's thing.
Right.
To show this kind of the same thing where you're looking at the score of the cards. He called them high and low,
right,
and neutral, and to try and see a trend going horizontally,
right,
connecting dots. So I developed the scorecard to do that, and I'm thinking about trying that with this method.
Right. Yeah, I mean, some people do that. I think, and I'm uncertain. I got to deal myself, some more cards. I'm uncertain as to which one. I think, honestly, what's most important, I find, is, to Andre's point, the trend will generally go up, down, up, down, up, down. You're going to see that a lot, which is very interesting that you find something in a game where you can pretty much, I wish you could bet whether the score was going to be higher or lower, than the last hand, because it's certainly one of the most predictable things that I've seen. It's uncanny how it goes up, down, up, down. I mean, it's very rare that you see 3 ups and 2 downs and stuff like that. That's a rare thing. You'll see these scores fluctuate up, down quite a bit. The most being 2 times in a row. And the other thing is, I think, and I'm pretty certain that our concept with 2 in a rows and 3 in a rows, with most common and least common, I think we can further tweak that with numbers by saying what is the most common score. Okay, 7, 8, and 9, or 7s, or 8, or 9, or 3, or 2, and maybe it doesn't have to be that granular. Maybe it needs to be groups of 3, like 7, 8, and 9 could be the most common, and group all of them on one side, and 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the other side could be the other one, and then maybe 5 and 6 are neutral, or whatever, however we need to figure it out. But I think that's probably the best way to go with this. But there's more data in these numbers than we're giving credence to, because no one, I don't think, has looked at it from the point of most common and least common. I think some people have looked at it like, well, it seems like Banker is getting a lot of naturals, or something like that, but not necessarily of the trend of it, looking at the trend and then determining, okay, are we due for the most common score on this time, and is that reoccurring? So that's what I'm looking for, and then how to tweak it. And again, if we're seeing, if on this side we're seeing this, and I'll over-exaggerate it, obviously, 2, 2, 2, 2, and then, for some reason we decide, okay, well, I'm going to bet here, or sometimes people will say, well, I've reached a threshold of where I feel as if it's going to change, and that's what I want to try to see if we can get rid of. We may not succeed, but when we say, well, it's been my experience that after you have it 4 or 5 times in a row, I know we read a lot of, well, after 5 times, be careful about betting it the 6th time. You remember that? You read those in CTs, and myself, and I know X.net, you've done some stuff with respect to that. But I want to be able to...
Kevin talks about MDB, the regression to the mean.
Yeah, regression to the mean, yes.
Is that the same thing, kind of?
Well, yeah, but I want to know. People say those things, and okay, so but sometimes it does continue, and I'm looking for the data that tells us when it will continue, and I think the data that may give us a clue to that to say, well, you know what? Most times I would bet that this is going to change now, or more so, I guess we actually say, I'm not comfortable betting it anymore because it's happened so many times now, and I've won so much. I'm playing to this stop-win, okay? And how many more times can it go? I want to look at the data of these numbers, of the most common numbers, and of the trends to determine if when we get to that point, we can look for more data to say, well, no, wait a minute. This is why it did that, and I think it's going to continue because of this. The trend is staying steady, up, down, up, down, up, down, and I don't see any variation in that, so I'm going to bet it's going to continue because the numbers that this data was based on that has not changed. Does that make sense? That's what I'm looking for.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
If I may.
Yeah,
quickly,
please, we do it slowly.
Joey Style. Yeah.
Hey, man.
Joey Style. I don't know if you're looking at the comments.
No, I'm sorry, let me look. I'm so sorry.
Would you consider a more simplistic way to card count than Alex taught us, combine what you're presenting?
Well, yeah, I mean, I am trying to make it simple. I don't think some of the data that he provided was statistically relevant. I think, I mean, you can count the cards any way you want, you know, but the only thing I want to know is what's the end score and what's the most common score on each side. Because I think that stays consistent. And that's what I'm interested in, and that's what I find is significant. Like, what is the most common score on each side, and is it matching the trend that to what Andre spoke to? And he's noticed the same thing that I do, is that trending will go up, down, and it's like a pendulum. And there's something statistically significant about it always just going back and forth and back and forth. It's like what should happen, and I hate to say that, but I think it's true, is you're going to find it to do that. And, you know, is that happening? But then underneath that, is there a score that has the most common score or the least common score on either side? Does that have some consistency that we can point out to tell us what side may be a little bit better bet, you know? Counting, I mean, if you want to count cards, and, you know, the counting of the cards and assigning a value as they're removed from the deck is looking for a mathematical advantage based upon depletion or a presence of cards. And I think that's been pretty exhaustive in Baccarat, unless they're non-random, then of course it's significant. But I think what we need to get to the heart of here, Joey, is that what is the most common score? And the reason I say that is because our studies and our looking and analyzing in SBI and the other things has really come to light that, look, man, this is the way to play this game, with most common, with least common. Those things are valuable statistics to know. Give me a little bit more of that most common and least common with respect to the numbers in the game now. That's what I'm looking for. I don't think that the card values per se are trackable to any advantage or any significant advantage unless there's a huge depletion of one or the other, or you can predict which is the first one. But I think knowing which one is most common and least common score, and as you do this, you'll start to see that. You'll see that some sides have higher than, like if the center line is 5 and above or 6 and above or something like that, you'll see most of them on the one side will be 6, 7s, and 8s, and the other ones obviously will be lower. And you'll see what side dominates, even if it's just a small domination from that perspective. Go ahead, I'm sorry. I'm all excited about this, you have to forgive me. So what were you going to say? What do you think of that? That's what I'm thinking.
I hear noise, Keith, but I don't hear people talking.
Okay. Well, no, I mean, they're all just freaking speechless from this wisdom. All right, don't worry, I won't quit my day gig to be a comedian. Don't worry. No, but that aside, seriously. So that's the whole idea of this, okay? And that's what we're looking for. But what I wanted to point out is how do you track this stuff? And to Andre's point, he's practiced it. You'll see this as soon as you start to mess with this, is that this trending data, this damn pen here, I must have it. You'll see this. You'll see.
Isn't it kind of like Keith? Isn't this kind of like VinSap and SAP and everything else?
It's much more novel than their shit.
Let me finish my thought.
Go ahead.
As far as tracking and then finding the significance.
Right.
So, we could track VinSap, but what's the significance of those numbers?
Right. Okay, so VinSap is based upon that it started like this. The premise of it was that at some point it's always going to hit this number, correct? Like you're going to see this number come up and you're going to see the number not come up in this, okay? And when it gets close to this number, start betting it, okay? And that takes the whole shoe into account, and it's a nice way to play. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He's had some success with it,
as well as 4D or 5D.
Right. I mean, so that's based on disparity. Okay, all that stuff is based on disparity, right? For the most part, like VinSap will say, okay, well, there's 0 here, so it's going to stay 0, or it's at 3 and it always tends to hit 4. Okay, it's always based on, and I've talked about this. I'm looking for this number to go here. Okay. Or I'm looking for that number to go here. What I'm looking for here is not that number to go here, but I'm looking for this trend that we're seeing to go up, down all the time. That's like just this churning of numbers that always tends to repeat itself. But then also, too, I'm looking for the number that is most common. I'm not saying I don't target a number first, or I don't look for disparity. I look for the game to tell me, as we do with Follow the Shoe, which is why it's successful. That's the difference between disparity betting and some of the other ways. Like Follow the Shoe says, well, here's the premise of it. You can bet one of two ways with the philosophy of how we bet Baccarat. One is bet what is happening will continue, right? Follow the shoe. If we have a lot of 2 in a rows, you could probably bet on Banker that 2 in a rows will come. Or if the last time, or what do we call it, recent most common. Well, it was a 2 in a row last time, so recent most common says it'd probably be 2 in a row again. And because here we only had 1 in a rows on player, and now it's a Banker potential 2 in a row. So I'm going to bet it's going to be a 2 in a row, and we have confirmed 2 in a row. So that philosophy is always betting what will occur will continue to occur. But the caveat that we put on that, and that's a great way to play. I don't think there's any better way to play. But the rub with that is there are times we get to it and we go, okay, well, now we've won it 4 times. I'm playing to a stop win, or your whole CCT say, be careful when it gets to 5, right? Have you read that? Or Way Too Fast says that, or whoever. I say it sometimes. I mean, I've talked with Ron Xlog, hey man, at 6 in a row, it looks to go opposite. Well, if that's the case, if runs end at 6 in a row, there has to be some reason for it that we can identify it, especially if it's, doesn't seem to be following. If it consistently does that, there has to be a reason, and that's what I'm looking for in this. So we're not really saying that it's going to hit a number. We're betting that something will occur because we see numbers that we've looked at, and they're doing that. It's either a most common score or a trend needs to repeat or something else that we're seeing. Then the opposite effect of that is, as to whoever said about MDB. MDB bets that what you see will continue to a point. Wait for 3 2 in a rows on Banker. Now, on the next potential 2 in a row, bet it's going to go opposite, right? So you're betting against what has been happening, which is kind of anti-follow the shoe, right?
Well, what Kevin referred to as regression to the mean.
Regression to the mean. But yeah, Kevin used to play, and if you look at his seminar back when he did Granville, he would bet that it would come all the way back, okay, which he'll admit costs him a lot of money, okay, and it's always a laugh now. But yeah, regression to the mean. In other words, it's just going to come back to zero. Well, what I'm looking for is what numbers are telling me those things. So when I get to a 5 in a row, CT says be careful when it goes to 5. And it's always a caveat. There's always that subjectivity. Unless you've seen this or unless you've seen that, you can call them a caveat or subjectivity. Or in fact, if there's only 2 or 3 variables, then you could call it a variable. But I want to know what that variable is, other than, well, I've seen it do that a lot. Well, what number in the trend is telling us that? Is it enough to say, well, we've seen that a lot, or can our numbers in this stuff show us that? And that's what I'm looking for. And what Andre and I and some others have seen is you'll see these trends in scores of banker and player develop patterns. And the most significant, easiest pattern that happens more than you probably think it would is up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Now, again, you have to consider what the range, and that's some of the stuff we can cover next time, is and I put together some stuff, it's not done, but the range of the score. What is the range of the score? Is the average, the most common score on this side, for example purposes, 1, and the most common score on this side is 8. Well, the range is 7, that's huge, Now, there may be some 7s on the weak side, but more so, there's more 8s and 9s on the other side, that range is consistent. So those numbers there, that's the significance of those numbers, I think will tell us the length of runs, especially when we see extended runs, because what happens inevitably when you see an extremely long run, and by that I mean 6, 7, 8, 9 in a row, I'm sure as Baccarat players, if you've been on one of those runs and you've bet, let's say it was on banker, and you bet, or let's say player because it's easier there, or banker now. You're on banker and you bet $100 or $200 on banker, and it's number 7, going for that 7 in a row, and what happens? They give the cards to the player, and once you do, he turns over an 8, right? Okay? But banker was so strong, and what happens to your surprise? You turn it over, and it's a 9. Okay, remember that, Perry?
I remember it.
Okay, good. Don't you forget that. Okay. So I think what is most common in the range of scores, the range, in other words, the difference in scoring from both sides causes, you can predict that strength of side to even surpass, what you would consider an extremely long run. And if you can pick out those runs that are extremely long and capitalize on that, that's an easy way to play, and it's great. And I think it's within these statistics to see that. Now, what causes that, is the most common score on each side. But then what I've seen is dealing just some games here that I've shuffled, is when you come across it, you'll see it where the score on the one side, instead of going up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, or 2 up and 1 down and stuff like that, you'll start to see 3 downs. 4 downs in a row. The score went from 9 to 5 to 4 to 3 to 2. I've seen that happen on the one side. And that makes longer runs on the other side. And then it also seems to be an indicator of the strength that the other side is going to continue. And that's what I'm after in these statistics, okay? You still want to play follow the shoe. You still want to look at all those 2 in a rows, 3 in a rows, what's the most common and least common categorical data. But I think we can go a little bit further by adding this information. And it really isn't that hard to add. It isn't that much because, one, you can look up at the scoreboard and it tells you the score, too, and just write it in. And I'm still working on whether or not, most times when you hit, it improves the hand, okay? So the only thing you could probably do with that is, I'm thinking, what side is hitting more? And one, is the side winning with just mostly pad hands that doesn't have to hit, or is the side that hits mostly? And I don't know if that's significant or not. I just haven't tracked it long enough. But I do see the trends of up-down, as Andre pointed out. And when you start seeing 3 down and longer runs, that's what triggers longer runs. Contrary to that, what would signal a chop? I'll tell you just from doing this, is where the mode scores are very close. In other words, if the average mode score on the banker side is 6 and the average mode score on the player's side is 6 or 7, something like that, something where everything is very close, then it's going to show you that it's a very, it seems to be a little bit more of a choppy game where you get 2 in a row, once in a while 3 in a row, and this and that, you know. And so what you're going to watch for during that time, and here's the rub, is you want it to still, hopefully it still stays choppy, but you start getting information about it where the range of the scores start going, let's say the average mode score goes from 5 and it jumps up to 7 and the other one goes down to 3. So now you start to see that range data in the scoring, okay? And now you can say, okay, you know what, I've been playing opposites here on these runs. I'm just going to hold off a second because I see this range expanding on either side, and maybe it's time for this run to come. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think what you're explaining right now, Keith, this is Mike.
Yeah.
Is that how to determine what's the best course of action in any given time.
Yeah.
When you switch, I mean, the shoe take is how to recognize that.
And that's what I'm looking for. That's why. I mean, follow the shoe is great. You know, I mean, it's the best thing there is continue to do that. But how do we qualify when we stop or when it's going to change or that one bet? Go ahead. Yep, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Whoever was talking, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Caller one and speaking a different language.
Is that Andre?
No.
Okay. So anyway, I'm right at about 45 minutes. And if I go longer than that, the tape will get ruined. So next week, okay, here's what I got. I got, to your point, I got some charts, and if my thing works here, I want to show them to you, and I'm going to post some more stuff about it tomorrow, this week, if I can get my pen working. My pen. So to your point, what charts? I was using these lines on the chart to put, like, in other words, this will be the player. In other words, this is red and this is black on a lot of scorecards. So in each hand, like this here, these two lines will compose a hand. So you can put a dot here for the player score and a dot here for the banker score, and you can then use your different colored pens to connect the dots so you can see trending a lot easier. And I'll have that next week to show to you. And then what you do is you go like this between them, okay? And you start to see these two lines, which side is easily stronger and which side, what's the most common score. It's very easy to see. And then up the side, this of course is 0, and this is 1, and this would be 2, and this would be 3, and this would be 4, etc. So you're able to see what side is trending, and then what's most important, as I said, is you'll be able to see, once I get these scorecards done, is what is the range of the most common score. So at a glance, you'll be able to see that. So that's kind of what I want to get into. So what I was hoping everyone would at least take a minute to do, if you get a chance this week, is try to deal yourself a shoe, excuse me, and let us know what you think. And then when I have these scorecards ready, we can kind of go ahead and kind of go through this and find some more data. Like I said, and I sent an email to the developer of the SBI to see if we can get them to add the card data into SBI so we can put that in. So that's where we're going. Any questions or closing comments on any of this? And, you know, I hope you find it exciting and interesting and everything else.
Extremely interesting. I'm gonna do the same as you, Keith. If it's okay, I'm gonna look at ways to track.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I got a couple good ideas down that look. It just has to be easy to do in the casino, too.
Right. Exactly.
You know, that's the most important thing. It has to be easy to do in the casino. So I'm going to go ahead. And I'm going to put this video in the thread on the forum for commentary, and, you know, for everyone to add their 2 cents or 3 cents, and we can kind of go from there to develop this into it. But I think the most important thing for this week is to understand and start tracking it even when you're playing in the casino. The most important thing that you can track with score-wise is to write down the score and see what is the most common score on either side and watch the trending. You know, did the score go down from the last hand or did it go up? And put those little arrows beside the score, and you'll see it. It'll be really interesting to you. And that's the kind of way we're going. And then, you know, if anybody has any other ideas, once we get enough data, we can make some intelligence decisions. And, you know, we can get go Ron X log to do that. Right, Ron? Okay.
Is Ron in the house?
I don't know. He's probably leaving. So that's what we're talking about. That's the whole gig with this. So I'm going to post it. Any final thoughts or questions here before I run out of this space to record this? I record. Anyone? So, no comments, no questions. Okay, great. So I'll get this up tomorrow. I'll put it up. I'll put tomorrow. I'll put the new chart up that I was working on to track it, and then also too, we're going to have to use the vertical scorecard, by the way. I'm sorry, not vertical, the horizontal scorecard to do the follow the shoe strategy, and we'll just have these charts at the bottom. I'll let everybody know how the developer is doing with SPI, and I think we'll find some interesting things to tweak follow the shoe a little bit more. I hope we get some of the traditional guys, you know, who are you know, kind of very involved with follow the shoe to come over and take a look. It'd be nice to get their 2 cents and see what they think. I think it works good at the. I think it works good. I know. You know, I kid around and make fun at Perry and them, but you know, we were playing the Rio there, and you know, I couldn't understand. I was tracking this data, and I was seeing up, down, down, up, down, down, and the strong side was alternating, which is why I bet against everybody at the table. And I know Perry can say I predicted a 9, which of course was more luck than good measure, but. The game that I was playing seemed to be just a little bit more on than what the disparity players follow the shoe was. I think I won a couple more hands just by tracking this data. I was doing the same thing that they were doing, but every once in a while they would go with most common, and I was going with what the data was telling me from the numbers rather than what we were seeing with most common and least common and disparity. So that was the difference in that game that I was tracking. So. And also, too, at the first one at the Palms, I know I was doing the same thing where I was playing quarters, actually, I think, in the first game. And when I think it was 15 or 16 units, you know, just tracking this data and playing most common and least common. So it was real interesting and had good results in the casino. So I'll post it up. I got to end it. Any last thoughts?
No, keep up the good work, Keith.
All right, well, thanks for your support, and get your friends to join Beat the Casino. We need the members here. Okay, so thanks, man.
Thank you.
I'll get this out to you. Give me an evening here. I'll get this up, and I'll get the new scorecard, and we'll talk next week. Is this time okay for everybody, by the way? Hopefully everybody will stick with us.
Real good time.
Yeah, okay, I thought so too. 9 o'clock Eastern time is good. So count on next Monday night, 9 o'clock. We'll meet again. I'll have the new information up, and we'll kind of go from there and keep plugging away at it. So, okay, talk to you soon. Hey, by the way, everybody knows that Kevin got married in Hawaii, don't you?
Yeah.
Have
you talked to him?
I texted him the other day. You know, he told me the time he got married and stuff. So everyone probably want to wish him well and stuff. So.
Yeah. So talk to him, tell him we all say congratulations.
Okay, I certainly will. And Tom, we'll see you. I'll see you next week for the Duquesne game, then, brother.
Thank you.
All right, brother. Take care.